Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Schuster, and I'm the Director of Conferences and Events for the Online Learning Consortium. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day today to join us for this webinar from Presenter Services, focusing on the Emerging Ideas sessions. And I am going to record the presentation today, and I'll send a link out afterward. Please note that there are some Zoom control, there's a Zoom control panel down in the lower portion of your Zoom screen where you can mute your audio, you can start and stop your video, you can chat and post questions in the chat box, things like that. So we do ask that you keep your audio muted while the presentation is going on. And if you do have a question, feel free to unmute or to write it in the chat box. And you can choose whether or not to share your video. We were just talking about that before the meeting started, and either way is fine. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to our OLC Presenter Services Subcommittee Chair, Jean Mandernack, to do an official kickoff and introduction. Thank you all.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you everyone for joining today. We have a great audience. As Katie mentioned, I'm leading up the Presenter Services for the upcoming conference. And if you're not familiar with Presenter Services, we offer a range of opportunities to help enhance your presentation or your presentation skills. So in addition to the webinars that you're attending today, there's also some static videos. We call them the essentials videos. There are some tips and guide sheets. And you can also sign up for coaching if you would like a little bit of one-on-one guidance or feedback. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Presenter Services, please do so. With that said, I am proud to introduce Sherri to our presentation today. Sherri is the Director of Online Learning at Coastal Carolina University, and she's been very active in OLC. I've gotten the opportunity to work with Sherri multiple times on various presentations for our activities with the Merlot Psychology Board, and she is an absolute master at the Emerging Ideas presentation type. So Sherri, thank you very much, and we're excited to work with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on the time you're joining us. I just want to welcome everybody. It looks like we've got a great audience. If you've just popped in, I want to encourage you to use the chat feature. You're welcome to drop questions into the chat, just type those along, and we'll periodically check on those throughout, and then we'll definitely make it a point to answer at the end too. This brief presentation, as both Katie and Jean said, will just be kind of an overview of what we call our Emerging Ideas sessions. If you guys have ever presented at a poster session, would you just pop something in the chat that says, hey, me, I've done a poster session before. Just say yes, or I have, or whatever it might be. That way I kind of get an idea of who has done poster sessions in the past of any kind. Oh, awesome. Look at you guys. That's wonderful. Okay, so many years ago in OLC world, we started looking at what the best idea was to make sure that we could get information out. Look at everybody. This is incredible. How to get the information out to everybody. And what we realized was there's an opportunity to do kind of an updated, modernized version of poster presentations. And we also recognize that if you're like me and you're at a higher education institution, sometimes when we call those poster presentations, we don't get the support, financial support, and the backing to do our travel. And we wanted something that was both reflective of a modernized type of poster presentation, hence Emerging Ideas, and then also something that would give us the same benefits of doing a poster presentation by being able to share with a very wide audience. So that's kind of the history behind Emerging Ideas. There'll be a link towards the end of this slideshow that has a bunch of links out to some of the items that Jean had mentioned from Presenter Services. So hang out with us and you'll get a copy of those. You'll be able to look at some of the goodies that we have coming up. One thing that I wanted to kind of start off with is my own personal bias. So, as a presenter, as a researcher, you try and tell people up front if you have any bias. So I will readily admit to both what Katie and Jean said. I am biased towards emerging ideas. These are my absolute favorite presentation type. In fact, 3 years ago, I stopped submitting to the call for proposals for full conference presentations because I love these so much. I actually purposely seek to present in this methodology. It is such a fun, low stress opportunity to meet with my colleagues at the OLC conferences. And again, if you're a presenter who likes low stress, this is definitely the best opportunity, and it's the most enjoyable, the most fun out of all of them for me personally. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you said that, Rolando. Yes, this has just been one of my favorite formats to actually manage. So let's go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about what emerging ideas are. You can see the agenda that I've pulled up here today. It's just a very brief overview of some topics, some tips, some suggestions, and then again at the end, you're going to have a downloadable help sheet that comes out of Jean's area and presenter services. It's just a 2-pager that gives you tips on preparing your session, how to have a great interactive session while people are there, and then maybe even what to do after. So our agenda today was to talk a little bit about what is an emerging ideas session, which we've started with. I'm going to give you some tips on how to get prepared to welcome people into your session, what to do once people come to you, and what to do as they come throughout your entire session, and then also what you do on the way out when you're welcoming a new group and you're sending the first group off. So that will be our high points for today. I tend to be a presenter, and that's actually a perfect style both for this particular short seminar that we're doing today, and also for you to keep in mind when you're doing your emerging ideas sessions. These are examples. These are just little snapshots from other emerging ideas, and as you can see here, these are groups, or these are smaller individuals, 2 and 4 individuals who are doing group presentations together. You can do collaborative, you can do solo presentations, but the emerging ideas, the real value and the power of those is that it is essentially a modernized version of a poster session where you have the ability to share 10 to 12 minutes of information over 5 to 10 slides, and you can each take time to go over that information. I'm going to show you a lot of other photos throughout this slideshow. If you guys have questions, again, use the chat or raise your hand if you need to, and you can pop in on audio at any point. You're not going to throw me. I love these sessions, so I would love to hear any questions that you have. So I want to talk just briefly about the idea behind how you prep going into your emerging ideas session. So if you're here, more than likely you have already had a session accepted. You may have even submitted a session as a different format type, and it may have been moved to an emerging ideas. And if that's you, I'm here to say you are lucky because you have won. It is absolutely so much fun, and you're going to have a blast. But what do you do if your idea that you submitted to the emerging, or you submitted to OLC Innovate, you'd plan to do a 45-minute presentation, and now you've got to do 3 15-minute recurring presentations. So my best tip for you, which I hope is indicative by this slide, is hone in on the main point or points that you want to get across. And you really need to narrow that down to either your top 1, 2, 3, or 4 points, no more than that. That's what you're going to focus on as you're doing your emerging ideas. And so if your presentation that you plan to talk about is about the successes that your campus has had with implementing OERs, which we would love to hear about, then if you're going to be talking about that, you need to hone that down to 4, 3, 2, or even 1 big point, and you'll plan to be able to do that presentation usually between 10 to 15 minutes maximum with one particular group, and then you'll roll through and do the same presentation again to a second and then a third group. And I'm going to show you some pictures of what that looks like as we go forward too. So for here, look at your submission that was approved by the OLC reviewers. Again, kind of go under, and I'm actually one of those people who will go through with my highlighter and we'll say, okay, here's my big points, here's the 3 or 4 things, and then I'll start fleshing out what my slides are going to look like. Kind of tongue-in-cheek slide design here for you as well. So the idea of the slide design, so more than likely what you'll be doing is you'll more than likely be preparing a slideshow presentation. Most people who do emerging ideas will use PowerPoint. Some people do use Prezi. You can use Google Slideshow, which is what I'm using. It's a matter of preference as long as you have the ability to host that platform on your laptop. It's very important for everybody here in every format, including emerging ideas, to understand that our OLC conferences are bring your own device. So you do need to make sure that you bring your own laptop with you. When you're preparing your slide, these are the recommendations that I have for you. In general, in addition to the main points that you'll have, like a total of 4 main points, you're going to kind of organize those in a way that you'll be able to quickly go through, spend 1 or 2 minutes on each slide maximum, and then you'll actually have a link out. If there's additional information, if there's research information, if there's additional articles and references, particularly if you have things that are examples of surveys that you administered, data that you've collected, more than likely you're not going to be able to share all of that as easily during your verbal presentation, but you have the opportunity instead, because you'll see in a moment there's very wide tables for you to lay out handouts. You can lay out cards. You also have the ability to bring a tabletop display if you'd like to. You can bring individual items on clipboards as well. One of the things that I have also found that is really important for individuals who have not presented through emerging ideas before is to understand that we're all going to be in a very large room together and we'll be presenting at the same time. And that's why I led off today's presentation with asking how many of you were familiar with poster presentations. So if you're familiar with those, you know that that means everybody's in a large room and we're each presenting to individuals who've stopped by our table. And so that's a very similar methodology to what we use with emerging ideas as well. So you would need to make sure that, as you can see on this slide, you're not focusing on sharing audio. I have seen a couple of examples where individuals have the opportunity through providing a second laptop or a separate device where they have a headset available for people to listen. That's basically the only way that we have found that works very effectively with audio, because it's just too much noise in the ambient noise around from everybody else doing a presentation. So in general, we discourage audio from being shared during your verbal presentation, but you definitely can link out to that for them to check on later. And one of the biggest benefits to me personally, and again, I'm a little biased, but one of the biggest benefits of the way that OLC sets up their conferences is we as presenters, regardless of our format, have the ability to upload our materials. So I would encourage everybody here who's going to be an emerging ideas presenter to go ahead and upload your materials in advance of your presentation. And then from there, you can actually just refer individuals who stop by and say, I have example videos, I have example audio. You can go onto my site from OLC's conference page and you can download it and listen to my information there. I do want to finally also point out the idea of universal design. One of the things that OLC has really been strengthening over the last couple of years as a conference overall is that we actually have some best practice principles for designing slides. We have in the past also even provided slide templates that are available for you that are accessible. One of the keys there is to make sure that anybody who's browsing your materials electronically or who may stop by your table at the time has the ability to see it and to also gain input from it. There's some great additional resources that are available, again, that are going to be shared at the end of this slideshow. But I do want to go ahead and point out, keeping in mind that when we design our slides, there are best practices, and OLC has done a really great job of giving us some standards to actually follow for that. So here's a look. So that's me in the center of the screen. And I will tell you up front, this is probably, and Christine and Katie are welcome to hop in here and actually provide support for my statement here. Normally, you do not have this many people at your table. And so this one was a bit of an unusual one. That was me presenting with my co-presenter Luke and my other co-presenter Amy that you're seeing here. So these were the 3 presenters, and then the individuals around us. We were just having a blast. Again, these are so much fun. And so we were having a really great time, and we were doing polling with our phones. And then I was also having them do thumbs up and thumbs down as I was talking to talk about whether they did and did not agree with things. So in terms of how do you interact when you have 15 people stop by your table? There's so many different ways to actually do that. And so that's why I want to tell you, this is the most I've ever had stop by in years of presenting at Emerging Ideas and the sister version of that, which is Discovery Sessions. But there are many, many ways that you can continue to interact very effectively with the groups. I'm going to go forward and show you a couple of those additional suggestions that I have for you. Oh, thank you, Christine. The idea of preparing your slides. So that's fantastic. I think all of you guys, as presenters who are familiar with doing that, you're just going to narrow it down. You're going to really shoot for having between 5 and 10 slides. You're going to work on making sure that your slides are accessible, and you're going to be prepared to do basically the same type of little pitch. I prefer to call it a pitch because it's so small, but like a mini presentation, maximum usually of 15 minutes, and you're going to do the same thing a total of 3 times during your emerging ideas. What do you do once you get them there is kind of the question that everybody asks me, though, is in general, you're seeing the photo that I chose here is somebody's actually holding a phone. So what I found is the best way to engage people is to do something that makes them stop at your table. So you don't necessarily want to be standing there waving your arms, but you want to do something that makes it not look like a blank table. And so look at the very last bullet. And Christine and Katie can tell you at OLC Accelerate and then also at OLC Innovate, this has worked so well. We had individuals decorate with tassels, with beautiful pink lamps. They brought all kinds of things to decorate their table. OLC will provide a table, they will provide a charger, you will have Wi-Fi, but anything else that you want to bring in terms of increasing the ambiance, I strongly encourage it. If you're like me and you work at a campus where you have responsibilities for going to like recruitment fairs for students, then what you have learned is if your table has candy, they stop. So if I can provide suggestions, bring candy, bring microwave popcorn, go pop it and bring a big bowl down and put it on your table. It sounds crazy, but they will stop at your table more than they will at anybody else's if they smell popcorn and if they see candy. So that's an easy way. If there's 10 other people, 15 other people in a room with you, that's an easy way to get them to at least stop by and visit with you and hear your ideas. Some of the other suggestions that I have up here are to tell a story. So start with actually this is the research. This is the reason why I decided to explore open educational resources at our campus. You know, our campus comes from an area where we have first generation students, and most of our students end up dropping at least one class because they can't afford it. If that's your story, if that's what motivated you to get involved in the research that you're wanting to share that story. That engages people. So definitely do that. I love asking them, and that's where you were seeing us do the thumbs up, thumbs down. I was saying, how many of you have had those experiences? Thumbs up. If you've not, thumbs down. And so that's for asking their stories and being interactive while they're actually physically there with you is so much fun. I'm going to pause for a second because I see a couple of questions and some comments. Candy and pins, absolutely. Elizabeth, I agree with that. Pins are great too. We also gave out little, I don't think I have one with me, little buttons at mine too. It was a Merlot button. And so you can give out all kinds of goodies and they absolutely love that. How many people total on average do most presenters get? It is really all across the board. And honestly, Cassie, these tips on this slide, like print this slide, circle it, make check marks, and do this slide. If you do this one, you get more people. And again, that's part of the reason why I love this. I love people. I love sharing my research. And this is how I get people to come by. If they see other people, they are more likely to stop. So that's the key. I can give you a tip that's not on this slideshow. It might be a little underhanded, but you should really do it because it's going to be great for you. If you have friends and colleagues that are there at the conference with you, have them purposely come by and visit your table, because the more people at your table, the more people stop. And so that is a fantastic idea. Bring people who are there with you and have them come and stop by, because if there's people already there, then the more people are able to come by. I would give you an estimate. I mean, we usually brought like 100 little pins. It's the same thing if you have handouts. We made little postcards at one of ours. I think, Jean, that was the one that I did with you guys with the psychology board. We made little postcards instead of full sheets, and the postcards were fantastic. So that was just a wonderful idea. Again, it's easier to fly with if you're flying in to have smaller items. And what I would also tell you as a tip from doing these is don't take your candy with you. Buy it when you get on site and then just give it all away. And that's actually easier too. Then you're not having to cart it on the airplanes with you. So one of the things that I did also put up here, and I've already mentioned with the cell phone live polling, so you can absolutely use Poll Everywhere. That has worked so well at every session I've done it with, and people just continue taking it each time you restart. So you've done session 1, you cycle, and now you're doing your second 15 minutes, and people take the poll again. So you just leave the poll up and you continue getting data and feedback. They love that. They love being able to use their phones while they're there with you. So that's a lot of fun. You saw the photo where I took one, a selfie with the big group. So do that. Tweet out your session. Absolutely tweet before your session and use the appropriate hashtag for OLC Innovate, and make sure that you're encouraging people to come by. Tell them what your table number is and your session number. You're seeing that as the second bullet there too as well. And definitely do try to bring something that they can go back and identify you with, either business cards. I saw somebody last year, which was really creative. She brought little stickies. So it was just like a little sticker, and it had her name and her email address. So there's all kinds of things that you could potentially do. You want them to be able to follow up with you in some way. So get your display set up in a way that gets their attention. The purpose in this is to share your research, but you've got to draw them in. And so this is actually how you do that. If you're like me and you've ever worked in sales, that's what this is. A lot of times it's just simply getting individuals' attention to let them know I have a great story to tell. But you have to get them there in order to be able to share that story. I worked at Bath and Body Works for 5.5 years, and so if you have that kind of a history, again with sales and working with very diverse groups, this is such a fun area to actually be able to share in. So here's a snapshot showing in perfect timing, because you guys were asking about the table setup. So here's a snapshot of an example from the discovery session, which is kind of the sister version of this in a different OLC conference. So this can show you about what the table height is. And I'm going to pause right here for a second. Are we going to have a second table at this time, Christine and Katie and Jean?
Sherri, Christine has it in the chat. There will also be a low cocktail round with another chair next to your table for use by attendees needing accessibility accommodations. This will allow you to move your laptop to the lower table should you have someone in a wheelchair or someone who needs to sit while listening to you, or that might stop at your station. So yes.
Okay, so, and this is one of the things, if you guys are new to working with OLC and doing presentations, this is one of the things I love about working with this particular group. So 2 years ago, this came as a recommendation from an attendee at one of our emerging ideas, saying that there needed to be better accessibility, and you can see that they're already implementing it. We started doing that last year, and it has been fantastic. So you'll have the larger table, and then you'll have a lower table as well. The problem with a higher table is individuals who might have limited mobility can't see the content that's up here too high for them, and so you do have the ability to move items back and forth as needed. So you're seeing the display here, kind of with the larger table, but you'd also have a smaller one available. Here's another example of a fantastic setup, and you can see the people behind them is actually what I love most about this, because you're seeing that there's different people stopping at different sections all throughout. So that's fantastic to actually be able to have individuals come by. One thing that I want to share also, and it goes in line with the general philosophy of universal design and of what we were just discussing, of having the separate smaller lower table, was your body orientation. So what you have to keep in mind is you're going to have individuals coming up to you during each of those 15-minute segments. You may be 6 minutes in and a person comes up at 6 minutes. You're going to have another person come up at 8 minutes and another person come up at 10 minutes, and sometimes they'll come from behind you. And so you just have to be constantly paying attention and orienting your body to welcome people. Pretend you're me and you're working at Bath and Body Works back in high school, and you're welcoming people in. So that's what you're doing. You're being inclusive, you're welcoming them in with your body language, you're turning your body to greet them in whatever way you can. Normally, what I like to encourage people to do, and what I would provide as my best tip, is I purposely use my body language to try to pull everybody in front of me. And so I'll say, welcome to our session. Can you step over here so that I can make sure I can include you and show you all the information? So you're pulling everybody in front of you, and you're not constantly having to talk to the people that are behind you. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to pull them in front of you, either by using your body language or asking them to step forward too. Is it pretty loud? So the voice that I'm using right now is the same voice I would use there. So no, you would do a presentation voice. So in general, as long as they're in front of you, not really. I'm not usually overly, I'm not yelling. If you do have multiple people that are talking, that's also exceptionally helpful because you can have somebody working as a greeter to bring them in. You can have a second person who's sharing your research. And one of the upcoming slides that I'm going to show in just a second has a snapshot that shows what it's like to have multiple presenters from Jean, who is our presenter services lead here. It's a fantastic example of another tip that I have for you guys. All right, so here's a pause, and we've got what's the recommended dress code. So you can see what they're wearing there. So it's business casual, absolutely, yeah, business casual. And then, I mean, if it's on Friday, then I tend to wear jeans and something that looks OLCE. And so it's even more casual on Friday, but I think it's a very casual dress code, definitely. All right, so let's take a look also at the idea of what do we do when we get them to our table and how do we continue to interact with them. So this is a snapshot, and you're actually seeing here is Jean, and she's on a laptop. And this is some of our other presenters. This is Catherine, and this is Julie, and I'm actually the one taking the photo. So there were 4 of us for this emerging ideas session. And we have, and I want you to see this down at the bottom of the screen, 3 laptops. Okay, so you don't have to bring 3, but boy, do 2 laptops work wonders. And so the idea of what I loved so much about this particular session was Jean at the far end was the one that was walking them through a demo. In the middle, we have a slideshow that is time progressing all on its own, and it's running through the slides. And I think we had like 6 slides. We have handouts on the table. There are pins on the table as well as pins for your shirt. And then I'm talking over on the other side and taking photos. And then the other 2 presenters are talking as well. So we just divided and conquered and had, you know, a consistent slideshow running. Somebody was talking through it, but then as people would say, well, can you tell us more about what Merlot is or what this tool is? Jean would take them to the side and walk them through individual demos. So there are so many different ways you can actually configure this if you do have multiple devices, whether it's an iPad or any other kind of device. And again, the same thing can go if you have handouts, you have things where you can refer them to read additional information. You can bring those readers and have that on the table as well. Yeah, Jean, and you can't really even tell because she always looks fabulous, but Jean was actually sick that day and still managed to actually do a bang-up job with our particular lesson. Let's see, and then Andrew is asking, so, I mean, ours was pretty fantastic. That sounds really biased, Andrew. There were lots that were really great examples. The one where you saw a couple of slides back where I was taking the photo and there were like 15 people, that was the most amazing session that I personally have ever been involved in, either from emerging ideas or discovery. And the reason was because multiple devices, multiple presenters, we had candy, and we were doing live polling and we were interacting. And so in general, those are the ones that the people who are the presenters and your attendees love the most. What they don't love is if people are just standing there waiting on you to come by, and then if you happen to stop by, then you just share information. That is great, but there's not as much energy. And so that's one of the things that's so much fun about these is, and I feel like it's what makes them great, is you can share your kind of passion for your research and your passion for whatever it is that you've been doing in your activities. So I feel like, again, mine is what I can share. Jean has been involved in these too as well, and probably has some of her own stories to share with how these have worked. But those that are engaging and that you have things to give them or have things for them to interact with are always ours that are just fantastic, and we have the best experiences with. Okay, I was making sure I was caught up on everything here. So here's kind of a little brief summary that I want to make sure that I've pointed on all of our high points that we've talked about so far. Definitely make it fun and engaging. Go into this, actually, guys, knowing that this is low stress. This is the lowest stress of any kind of presentation format. And if you didn't know that when you applied for it or when you got moved into it, then just go, this is going to be great, because it's fantastic. You're essentially doing a 15-minute presentation with 5 to 10 slides, and then you're doing it 2 more times. It's so simple. It is so succinct. You can easily share all of your information, and you can make so many great contacts. And that's probably one of the things that I've found the most value from doing this. I use this as an opportunity to have a clipboard or to have an iPad and say, are you interested in doing this research with me? Would you leave your name? And then I turn around, and the moment I get back to my office after I leave the OLC conference, I immediately reach out and I have new research buddies. And so that one slide that you saw where I was presenting with Amy and with Luke, Amy and Luke and I had never met in person until the day of that conference. We had all been collaborating via LinkedIn and via Google Slideshow prior to that day. So I use this to find new research buddies, and I would definitely encourage you guys to do the same. It's just such a wonderful outreach opportunity. Using multiple devices, again, that can mean encouraging their use of Poll Everywhere, encouraging them to use their cell phones. It could mean you bringing multiple devices. Again, we have Wi-Fi that will be available, so you won't have any issues with getting everything on. I will tell you from my experience in doing these at all the OLC conferences, in any conference, you need to make sure you're there and you're on the Wi-Fi and you've tested everything before it's time for your session to start. So definitely do make it an opportunity, give yourself an opportunity to go ahead and get set up and verify that everything's working correctly. Okay. Oh, Veronica, that's great. I like that too. I feel like it is much more productive than just a standing conversation or presentation. So I definitely agree with that. Make sure that you take the time to pause and just say, anybody have any questions? How are you feeling? What is your experience? Some of the don'ts that I will tell you is try not to just push through those 5 to 10 slides without acknowledging people as they come in, because if you don't point at them and say, hey, welcome, they're going to turn around and go to somebody else's session. And that's my experience. So just make sure you say, hi, welcome, and just greet everybody. Hand them candy even. That sounds terrible, but it is such an attractive thing even for us as an adult. Give them something. Say, here, thank you for coming to my session. We're talking about, and then keep going. So just make sure you're fully inclusive and you're welcoming everybody as they come in. Do not use audio or video as your primary. Again, make sure that you have something that is a central tenet is usually a slideshow. And again, your choice, how you want to put that slideshow together. I have a preference for Google, but whatever you want to build, but you're going to have that as your central mechanism. If there is audio and video, that's fine. I would either have a headset, something that they can listen to separately, or I would have it online for them to actually listen to later. Okay, what is the best practice to follow if you're partway through a presentation and 2 to 3 people come over? I would actually, and this is what I've done, and I've seen other presenters do this quite a bit too, very successfully. Let's say you're 6 slides into a 10-slide presentation and you're talking about, well, here's the outcomes from my research, and then you have 2 to 3 people come in. What I'll say is, hey guys, we're just talking about the outcomes. If you'd like, I have 2 more slides to go through, and then if you'd like, you're welcome to hear kind of the background of how we started our study too. And they'll stay. They almost always stay. As long as you tell them this is the part I've walked in on, they usually stay. So that's usually what I would like to do. Is just say, this is where we are, we've got 2 more slides, and then I'll be starting over. Because like you guys, a lot of attendees don't know the format of emerging ideas. They think you're almost finished. And unless you tell them I'm about to start over, they don't know that either. And so it's very helpful to educate them as they pop up too. Don't be afraid to point to the second device in the handouts. In fact, I specifically encourage you, say, hey, we brought this for you to test out our course that we built. Feel free to hop on there and be a student and learn this. Feel free to hop on there and listen to our little video. So point that out as people are coming up. And I'll tell you, that's also one of the things specifically, Daryl, that I have found that works very well is if you have somebody that's coming at the very tail end, you can do that. You can point them to the handouts and you can point them to the hands-on so that they have something to do before you restart your session too. So that works exceptionally well too. Okay, and so this one here is, do you have a success story? So you guys have actually already been answering that question all the way through my discussion today. So if there are things that you want to say, hey, this really worked for me, and it's something that wasn't on the slides, feel free to share those. I said candy, popcorn, lamps, ambiance, all kinds of other things. If there are other things that have worked very well, then feel free to share those at this time. At this particular time, also, I want to point to these handouts, which you can actually get directly from the OLC Innovate site, or you can click from this slideshow. One of them goes to presenter services as a whole. One of them has these great best practice guides that have been built for all formats, including emerging ideas. And then the very last one is the emerging ideas guide. And I didn't point this out at the beginning, but that little light bulb that you're seeing, that icon, that actually signifies your session. So if you're presenting an emerging idea, I like to tell people, put that in your slideshow. That's helping people to understand, oh, this is a different format. So I'd like to actually label my emerging ideas presentations and have this, this icon with the light bulb in there in my slideshow itself, because it identifies me and my slideshow as one that was presented in an emerging idea format. So this is also just a kind of a very brief overview, and I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to point that out, that there is actually a difference between the high table and that low table. So you can see this here. This is actually where the high table is, and then there would be a lower table right here. So you would actually have the ability to put some of your items on there. Katie, do you want to cover this information?
Sure, thank you, Sherri. So actually, can you go back to the previous slide for just a second, please?
Absolutely. There you go.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that every table or station will have a number on it, and typically 1 to 12, 1 to 13, something like that. And in the program booklet, your session will have a position number that corresponds to your table number. Those will be assigned over the next week or two. So if you go to your program session listing right now, you won't see a position number yet, but I will be working on assigning those over the next week, maybe 2 weeks. So I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that. You can see on that lower picture, the number 10, that is, you know, just an example of what that might look like, to have that position number taped onto your table, basically. Each table will also have a metal table stanchion that will have a sheet of cardstock in it with your presentation name, a title, your name, and the date, time, etc., and your position number. So each of your tables will be identified in that manner. We already talked about the tables. Each table will also have a power strip so that you can plug your laptop in. I don't know if you mentioned that or not, but I'm just mentioning it again here. And you also did talk about no mic speaker audio, but I did want to reiterate one of the things that I mentioned in response to a chat question on handouts. So you are welcome to bring a small stack of handouts, but we also really strongly encourage you to upload both your presentation file or link if you're using a Prezi or something like that, and any supplemental materials, handouts, etc., to your session page on the OLC website. I will be sending out an email later in February, early March with logistical information that includes the directions on how to do that. The other thing I wanted to mention that I mentioned in the chat corresponds to this slide, thank you, Sherri, is that there is wireless internet in the conference space, but I would strongly recommend, again, that you don't rely on accessing your presentation through the internet. Make sure you have a local hard copy, on your laptop that you can present from, just in case. We never anticipate that there will be Wi-Fi issues, and we're confident in the Wi-Fi in the space. However, just in case, we always recommend presenting from a local copy on your laptop to avoid any potential issues there. The 16:9 slide format doesn't really necessarily apply to this presentation type because you are presenting from your laptop, so you can choose what works best for you. But we also ask that, that you start and end with a session evaluation slide so that you can encourage attendees to provide feedback for your presentation. So again, with that logistics email for the presenters, I will send out a link to that. The link actually can already be found on the presenter services website and the presenter FAQ page, as can the link to an OLC presentation template. If you are looking for a template, you are by no means required to use the OLC presentation template. We just get that question often. Some people are looking for a presentation template, so we started providing one that we've tested for accessibility and things like that. But we encourage you to use your own template, your institution's template, so that you can build your own personal brand. We just provide it as an option for you should you be looking for that option. And I think, as Christine mentioned in the chat also, there will be a monitor, an OLC staff member who will be monitoring the space where the emerging ideas sessions will be taking place. If you need AV or tech assistance, the monitor there can help you reach out to one of us to make sure that you have an AV or a tech person help you with that. So, and then Daryl in the chat asked about email the slide evaluation link. So in the logistical email that I will send out later in February or early March, there will be information on that, including a link. If you are eager, you can go to the presenter services webpage right now or to the presenter FAQ page and download it. It is available already. Are there any other questions about logistics?
One thing I did think about that we did not, I didn't think about discussing in terms of the setup is there are chairs or stools that are there, and a lot of people actually ask that. So there will be again this year, correct, Katie?
Yes, each station will have a chair as well.
Perfect, yeah.
High table, low table, chair, power strip.
Right, and I find that I typically am not sitting, but there is a chair, and the reason why that ends up actually being useful is not even for me or any of the other presenters. It's usually for somebody who comes up who wants to sit during the presentation or who needs to sit. And so normally the chair is there should you have somebody come up who needs to actually take a seat, rest as they're listening to the presentation. So there's usually a chair there as well if you need it or if one of your visitors needs it as well. Are there any other questions that we can answer for you? You can add it in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can pop on the camera. Anything you might have. And then I'm going to scroll all the way back up. You're also welcome to to email me. So there's my email address. If you have any questions about these, if you have anything that crops up that you'd like in terms of recommendations and best practices, then you're most welcome to email me directly. It's just my first initial last name, srestora@coastal.edu. And you're welcome to send me an email if you'd like to that one. And then again, at the very end, you saw these links out to the presenter slides, including the Emerging Ideas Guide, which is fantastic, coming again from the presenter services area. And it's just a quick little short page that kind of has a snapshot for things to make sure that you remember to do for your format.
Sherri, I just wanted to add for everyone that I did post the link to that session evaluation slide in the chat for those of you who are looking for it sooner rather than later. And if Marlene is asking when the recording will be available, it usually takes a couple of hours to render, but what I'll do is probably tomorrow, maybe later today, depending on scheduling and whether the recording renders or not. I will update the Google Calendar invitation with the link and resend that to everybody who was invited, which is all the Emerging Ideas session presenters. I will also post it on the presenter services page, and it'll be basically we'll upload it to YouTube and then post the link from YouTube from presenter services to YouTube. Just note that with the native captioning of YouTube, sometimes that takes overnight. So if you're looking for the video right away, it may not have had time for YouTube to render those native captions yet, if that's important to you, and that's something that you need, but they will be there, within 24 hours of posting the video to YouTube.
And I saw we were getting some questions about how to get access to this information. So if just Google OLC Innovate, make sure you go to the OLC Innovate 2019 page. From there, if you just go to Program Sessions and then Presenter Services, that's the overall listing of all these different types of things, the presenter guides, a quick link to this webinar as well as the others. This is also, as Jean mentioned earlier, how you can request coaching if you want individual coaching, and then you can read more about who our coaches are there as well. If you click on the presenter guides, that just jumps down to all of these different types of guides that we've built out. And that includes the one that I just showed you, as well as a checklist, the slide design, and other information that's been built out. So definitely take a look at these. They're fantastic. They are also new. Over the last year or so, we've been building these for everybody. So they really have come a long way in terms of providing recommendations for best practices. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, if you scroll up just a tiny bit into the section above the presenter guides, you'll see those links to the presenter FAQ, the slide template that you are welcome to download and use, and the session evaluation slide as well.
Yep, perfect. And then I did see one question in the chat from Karen where she's asking about polling visitors at your station and best practices. I normally wouldn't do more than, say, 2 total questions. So you wouldn't want to do more than you don't want to do all polls. So you might start out with one on your first or your second slide, and you'll do another one at the very end. So something very short. In general, I don't ask them to text responses, meaning questions or answers. I normally have them, type A for yes or B for no or whatever it might be. So I do very polar types of polling because this is so short, and because of the fact that people are coming in and out so quickly. I just keep it very short with the polling, and I do usually have a second monitor, so a second laptop up that's showing the live results from Poll Everywhere so they can see it as they're entering it too. Okay, any other last minute questions? You guys are welcome to email us too. Go ahead, Katie.
Yep, no, I just wanted to reiterate something that Jean posted in the chat. For those who are watching the recording, I don't think the chat comes through, but I will download a transcript of the chat and then send that to Jean for distillation. But one thing that she mentioned was that if you are interested in coaching, coaching can be as simple as having a coach review your slide deck, if that's something that you feel like you're looking for feedback on. So there's different levels of coaching, and you can certainly request coaching at any of the various levels as well.
Cassie, this is the software that I use, and I actually only use the free version. It's called Poll Everywhere. If you're watching this live, then you can see the link that I just dropped in the chat to Poll Everywhere. The reason why I love this one is it does plug in directly with PowerPoint, so it's just super simple to use, and it's really easy for people to respond to from their cell phones. So that's the one that I have a preference for, mainly because it's free. And so I only use the free version, and it has always worked out fine for me with both full presentations and with these shorter emerging ideas as well. Yep, Slido is also great. We've been using that for a while too.
And we actually use Slido in the keynotes to collect questions for the keynote presenters as well. All right, well, I can hang out for another couple of minutes in case anybody has any questions.
And
but I did want to thank you, Sherri. I just want to thank Sherri for her very thorough overview of emerging idea sessions today. Thank you so much. And Jean for being here as well as the presenter services lead. And to all of you who joined us today, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you in Denver.
Yes, thank you, Sherri. That was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. Please do email if you have any additional questions. We are so excited to see you in just a couple of months.